It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 32, looking at the groups and teams of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This episode is looking at Group E: Germany, Ecuador, Ivory Coast, and Curacao. Here we go! It's the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada, Series 32. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Connor. And today we're looking at Group E for the World Cup. This group is made up of Germany, Ecuador, Ivory Coast, and Curacao. So in addition to this media cast on the World Cup groups, Kevin is also doing a series on the players of each team.
Yeah, that comes in two parts. Part one is a look at the candidates and their likelihood of making the squad. We introduce the main players there. And in part two, which we put out after the squad lists are released, the final squad, we go over who made it and who didn't from our list from part one. And we try to predict starters and other matters like updating injuries.
Yeah, but moving on, this media cast is divided into three sections, so let's take a look at those.
Yeah, in part one, we'll just introduce the teams in terms of geography and demographics, giving the location and population of each, basically.
Yeah, in part two, this is where we'll do an overview of each team's history and recent form. So we'll look at how they've done really over the last 4 years in particular.
Yes, and then part three, we're going to compare the teams directly in terms of ranking, head-to-head records, and so on. And we're going to end with a discussion of their prospects and our predictions. All right, so before we begin, can you tell me anything that'll get me into this group, Connor?
Yeah, well, there's some pretty strong-looking teams in this group, but actually none of these teams have played a knockout game in a World Cup in 12 years.
Good Lord, really?
Yeah, even the mighty Germany.
Yes, well, I do know that they have fallen at the group stage the last two times, and we'll look into that. I see you are wearing a Germany shirt. Is that just because you have it or because you're a fan?
Well, I have German heritage, so I'm obliged to cheer for them, despite the disappointment of the last 8 years.
All right. Well, I don't have Ivory Coast heritage, but I'm generally going with my theme of wearing the shirt of the lowest ranked team in the group, which I have, and I don't have a Curacao shirt. So here I am with my Ivory Coast shirt.
They have great shirts, though, the bright orange. It's a good one.
Yeah, I like it. It's great. All right. Shall we jump into section one and take a look at the countries? Okay, let's start with Germany there.
Yeah, Germany, they're known as Die Mannschaft, or the team. So Germany is a large country in Central Europe, and it has a population of 83 million.
Okay, great. Next we have Ecuador.
Yeah, they're known as La Tri, like Mexico, for the three colors of their flag, so yellow, blue, and red. It's a relatively small South American country on the Pacific coast, in between Colombia and Peru. And Ecuador has a population of 18 million people.
18 million, okay. Next we have Ivory Coast.
Yeah, their nickname is the Elephants. Ivory Coast is a mid-sized country in West Africa with the southern coast on the Gulf of Guinea. It's bordered by Ghana, Mali, and Guinea, among some others.
Okay, that's Ivory Coast. And then we have Curacao, debutants at the World Cup here.
Yes, Curacao's nickname is the Blue Wave. Curacao is a small island nation off the coast of Venezuela, and its population is 150,000.
Right, and previously known as Netherlands Antilles, which does have a bit of history in the Cup, which we'll look into. And let's compare them directly then in terms of population.
Right, so Germany's population, population 83 million, so the largest country in this group.
Okay, 83 million.
Next, we have Ecuador. They have a population of 18 million, so just under about a fifth of what Germany has.
Okay.
Next is Ivory Coast. They have 32 million people, so the second largest in this group.
All right.
And then finally, Curacao, 150,000. They are the smallest nation ever to compete in a World Cup.
Wow, 150,000. I think I have to go down to like 2 pixels. Yeah, that's about all I can do there. How do you like the flag outlay there?
That's good. I can barely spy Curacao, but we'll see if they make an impact in the cup.
Let's hope so. Okay, there we go with our fun and games there. Let's jump into section 2 here then, and we're going to look at the teams. We're beginning with kind of a broad overview. The graphic may be quite small here. We will make it bigger as we go through, but for this, I would recommend just observing how much green, blue, and red they have. Red being kind of a poor result and green a good result, and blue somewhere in the middle. Okay, let's start with Germany and look at their broad participation and achievements.
Right, so Germany withdrew from the first World Cup in 1930 and were banned in 1950 due to their role in World War II. Otherwise, they've entered and qualified for every World Cup. They didn't enter the first 2 Euro Cups in 1960 and 1964, but have joined consistently since.
Yeah, and Germany, really the second best team in the world behind Brazil, arguably. Would you agree?
I think that's a fair assessment, yeah.
Yeah, well, they've won the World Cup 4 times, almost like clockwork every 20 years, actually, in 1954, 1974, 1990, and 2014. And they've reached the final 8 times. They've never failed to pass a qualification campaign until recently, and have they've never failed to pass a qualification campaign and only failed to pass the group stage 3 times. Their Euro record, though, is not as impressive. They do have 1 failed qualification campaign there, and also have failed to pass the group stage 3 times, a higher percentage given that there are fewer editions of the Euro Cup. However, the final results are equally impressive, with 3 Euro Cup titles and 6 appearances in the finals, or in the final game. Their title wins were 1972, 1980, and 1996. So a very successful team there, and we'll take a bit of a closer look at their World Cup history.
Yeah, so for Germany, it was a weak start in World Cup play, withdrawing in 1930 and being banned in 1950. But from then until 2018, though, they not only qualified for all cups, but went past the group stage every time. That latter is a record not even Brazil can boast. Surprisingly, the only time Germany had not passed the group stage was in 1938, at the height of their political power. The mid-1990s proved a relatively weak period by their standard, reaching only the quarterfinal twice in a row in 1994 and 1998. Outside of those years, they finished in the top 3 every time from 1982 to 2014. Recent times have been poor, though. Group stage knockouts in both 2018 and 2022 marked their worst period in World Cup play. East Asian teams have been their bane. 2018 saw them lose to South Korea in the 3rd game, having lost to Mexico in the opener. And they lost their opener to group winner Japan in 2022. A tie with Spain and a win over Costa Rica were not enough to secure an advancing position.
Well, they might be relieved so that they don't meet an East Asian team in the group here.
Yeah, they need to get off to a better start. It was those bad starts, losing their openers, that kind of cost them.
Yeah, well, they play Curacao in their opener here, so that would be a bad start beyond imagine if they lost it this time. Let's move on to their regional history in the Euro Cup.
So Germany started weakly in European competition too, and their record there, as we said, is not as stellar. They did not enter the first 2 Euro Cups and did not qualify on their first entry in 1968, which is the only time they failed to qualify for a cup. 2 wins over the next 3 campaigns, with a 2nd place finish in the middle, marks their strongest period in that competition. It was followed by a first-round knockout in 1984, and the same thing happened after their title win in 1996. In fact, 2 group stage knockouts in a row in 2000 and 2004. They reached the semifinals in each of the next 3, taking second place in 2008, but their recent cups are disappointing, with a round of 16 exit in 2020 and a quarterfinal exit when they hosted in 2024.
Wow, so a pretty weak period for Germany, relatively speaking. We will take a look at the Nations League history quickly here.
Yeah, so Germany's remained in Nations League A throughout, though it was only a structural change that kept them up when they finished last during a weak campaign in 2018-19, given that no teams were relegated that year. They finished in the middle of the group in the following 2 editions, but finally won a group in 2024-25 and proceeded to the finals for the first time, though they finished 4th.
Right, and that's a recent history, so we'll be looking at that shortly. But let's finish with a kind of a summary of their strength. So, in terms of strength, Germany is a top-tier team and always have been, although the recent period is extending long enough to put that in some doubt. The early years of the World Cup were not strong, but 3rd place in 1934 established them as a contender. When they did dip in one competition, their strength was supported by the other, such that their poor start in the Euro competition in the 1960s was supported by 2 semi-final finishes in the 1958 and 1966 World Cups. They took 2nd place there in 1966. The mid-90s was a dip in World Cup results, but they won the 1996 Euro Cup. So recent times mark their worst period as they falter in both competitions. 2 World Cup group stage knockouts, combined with a round of 16 finish and a quarterfinal exit as host in the Euro Cup. Add to that Nations League play, where they failed to reach the finals in the first 3 editions, doing so only in 2024-25 and only finishing 4th there. That's equivalent, we'd say, to a semi-final finish in the Euro Cup, which would be their best result since 2016. So 4th place in the Nations League there is a step in the right direction, but it is not as top tier as they are accustomed to.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Great. All right. Well, we move on to look at their recent history. We're going to begin that with the World Cup in 2022.
Yeah, so in terms of qualifying, apart from a shocking loss at home to North Macedonia, Germany won all games and finished comfortably in 1st place in the qualifying group. At the World Cup, the tournament began as the last one ended, with a shock loss to an Asian team, Japan coming from behind to beat them. A competitive game with Spain saw them score at 83 minutes to earn a draw, and the 3rd game with Costa Rica proved as exciting as their tournament opener in 2006 when they met. Germany were up a goal, but then found themselves down by the 70th minute, 2-1, before they came back to win. But it was not enough, and they went out at the group stage for the 2nd World Cup in a row. A lapse becomes a lull in their World Cup career with 2 exits at the group stage.
Yeah, really shocking. Okay, that's their 2022 World Cup. Let's move on to their 2024 Euro Cup campaign.
Yeah, Germany didn't have to qualify because they hosted the tournament. They started the tournament with a thunderous win over Scotland, 5-1, then beat Hungary before tying a well-performing Switzerland, which still saw them finish 1st in the group stage. They beat Denmark in the first knockout game, but lost to eventual champion Spain in the quarterfinal, going out at 119 minutes of extra time, just as the game seemed bound for penalties. So an agonizing loss.
Agonizing, yes. That was unfortunate. And again, a quarterfinal would be a good result for many teams, but for Germany, their standards are a bit higher. Let's look at their most recent UEFA Nations League campaign.
Yeah, so it was in League A where Germany have played all their Nations League matches. And as we mentioned, this was one where they finally kind of put it together and won the group. They won all their games at home, including some big wins over Hungary and Bosnia. And they finished first, 5 points ahead of the Netherlands, who were second. That brought them to the quarterfinal stage where they lost, or sorry, they won a home and home against Italy, 5-4 on aggregate, so pretty exciting. But then they lost to Portugal in the semifinal before losing the third place match as well to France. So it was a fourth place finish there.
Yeah, pretty strong European teams there at the end. So no great shame in that. But again, fourth place, probably a bit below German hopes there. Let's look at their qualification campaign for this World Cup.
Yeah, so Germany with a point to prove perhaps, but qualification got off to a rocky start with a 2-0 loss to Slovakia. However, Germany did recover to win all their remaining 5 games. Northern Ireland and Luxembourg were also the competition. So first place in the group qualified them automatically for this tournament.
Yeah, good for confidence, but really a very easy group for a lot of the European teams.
Yeah.
Do you think the easy passage into the World Cup will affect them there?
I don't think so much, partly because they've had experience playing stronger teams in the Nations League and of course meeting teams in the Euros. So I don't think so, but we did talk about losing the first game of the last 2 World Cups. They lost their first one in qualifying here. So maybe that is a bit of nerves from an underperforming team. So you mentioned it earlier, they play Curacao first. Maybe that's just the perfect start Germany needs to get off on a good footing.
Yeah, really, because if they faced a strong team, that nerviness might be an issue. Okay, well, that's our look at Germany. We are going to look at the friendlies of some teams if they're relevant, but not really anything relevant for Germany. The only interesting thing is that they were scheduled to play the Ivory Coast in March, but had to cancel that game when they were drawn with them in a group. So they played Ghana instead.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we move on to Ecuador, and once again, a kind of a very broad overview of their participation and achievements. So that represented in green, blue, and red here.
Ecuador played their first international game way back in 1938 and played their first Copa America in 1939. They withdrew from 3 of the 11 editions afterwards, but from 1959 they participated consistently in Copa America. That's 22 straight editions up until 2024. They were quite late in joining World Cup play. The Brazil-hosted World Cup in 1950 was their first entry, but they withdrew before playing any games and didn't enter the following 2 editions. 1962 then, hosted by Chile, became their first qualification campaign, and they've not missed since.
Right. Well, in terms of achievement, they have really been among the weaker South American teams, their main advantage being the altitude of their country. Their best Copa America results are 2 fourth-place finishes, both as hosts in 1959 and 1993. Only in recent years have they passed the group stage with any regularity, but doing so in 3 of the last 4 editions makes it something of a strong period. They've also looked more convincing in World Cup play recently. They didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2002, but since then have reached 4 of the 6 cups. Their best result is a round of 16 finish in 2006, and in fact, that's their only trip beyond the group stage. All right, well, let's do a little closer look at their World Cup history.
So Ecuador's second qualification campaign in 1966 saw them come very close to reaching the Cup. They came tied for first in their qualifying group with Chile. It was resolved through a playoff game, which they lost. They really didn't come close again until 2002, where they finished second in the 10-team qualifying group, well behind leaders Argentina, but ahead of Brazil. It proved a strong period as they not only reached the Cup in 2006 again, but passed the group stage, which is the only time they've done so. Failing to qualify in 2010 made it seem as like the end of a good period, and unlikely that they would qualify again, especially since they hadn't passed the group stage of a Copa America since 1997. But their World Cup form proved better, and they did reach a third cup in 2014. However, 2018 was their weakest campaign since the start of the large qualifying group in 1994. An 8th place finish replaced 6th as their worst finish. But they recovered to reach the cup again in 2022, and 2026 was a remarkably strong campaign, losing only 2 of 18 games, and those were away in Argentina and Brazil. Despite a 3-point deduction, they finished second. So Ecuador have thus reached 5 of the last 7 editions of the World Cup. In the cup itself, they always win at least 1 game. In their last 2 visits, they've earned 4 points, tying giants France and Netherlands, but unfortunately falling short of advancing.
Well, that's kind of interesting. Tying France and Netherlands will give them confidence playing against Germany.
Yes, it will.
All right, let's jump and look at their Copa America history.
So as we mentioned, those results in World Cup qualification are not reflected in Copa America play where they're weaker. Their best results are 4th place finishes in 1959 and 1993, 2 tournaments they hosted, and those really aren't great results as host. Prior to that, 5th place in the region was their best result, and they didn't do better than 6th after 1942. From 1975, the round-robin format changed to the groups and final stages that we're familiar with today. In that format, they only ever passed their group stage twice to 2015. Worse still, from 1995 to 2015, they registered only 2 wins and 1 draw, despite reaching 3 World Cups during that same period. Ecuador rectified this in the 2016 Copa America, the 100-year special edition, by going undefeated in the group stage, including a draw with Brazil. Despite lapsing in 2019, it began a run of form more commensurate with their World Cup form, passing the group stage in 3 of 4 most recent campaigns. But despite taking eventual champions Argentina to penalties in 2024, just 1 step beyond the group stage has proven their limit, as in World Cup play.
All right, pretty good there. We'll finish the broader history with just a summary of their strengths. The long-standing argument actually has been that Ecuador only did well in the high altitude of their home. That's why, or at least it's posited, that they did well in World Cup qualification because they played half of their games at home, but not in Copa Americas that took place outside of Ecuador. While there may have been some truth to that from 2000 to 2014, it doesn't really hold before or after that period. Before, they were weak even at home, and since that time, they've been stronger than the argument allows. They moved from a 3rd-tier South American team to a 2nd-tier power, and in their 2026 qualification campaign, almost looked top-tier. The recent success in Copa America looks like it could be a strong period for Ecuador, but the more sustained 2nd-tier form in World Cup play has lasted for more than 20 years. Okay, so that's our look at the broad view. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty here with their recent performances. We begin with that huge qualification group for World Cup 2022 qualifying.
Yeah, Ecuador here put in a very strong performance. They were in 3rd place most of the time and only suffered 1 loss at home, though to Peru, so not one of the stronger teams. They were not impressive on the road with only 2 wins, 2 ties, and 4 losses, but on the whole, it was still good enough for 4th in the qualifying group, far behind Brazil and Argentina, and just behind Uruguay, who overtook them in the final round. At the World Cup, they opened with a win over host Qatar and then tied Netherlands. However, a loss to Senegal in the 3rd dropped them from joint 1st to 3rd in the group stage, and they really were unlucky not to pass considering they got 4 points. Ener Valencia, their star forward, scored 3 of their 4 goals.
Wow. Yes. Okay. Well, in this World Cup, I think that would probably be an advancement, especially with one of the teams taking no points.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. Well, on we go to the 2024 Copa America.
So this was in the United States, and there was no qualification required for South American teams. Ecuador took an early red card in their opener against Venezuela and ended up losing, but they beat Jamaica and tied Mexico to finish second in the group stage. A late equalizer brought them to penalties in the quarterfinal match against Argentina, but they lost in the shootout. So the quarterfinal remains kind of that recent cap on their advancement.
That's right, but still, a better result in Copa America than the historical result.
Yeah.
There. And we finish with World Cup 2026 qualifying, a pretty good campaign for Ecuador here.
Yeah, an excellent campaign, you could say, although they were no match for Argentina, who finished 9 points ahead of them. But their only losses, as we said, were in Argentina and Brazil. They did tie 8 of their 18 games to finish second in the qualifying group, despite taking a 3-point penalty for the use of an illegal player. They finished 1 point ahead of a cluster of teams from third to sixth that were all tied on 28 points. So their 29 points was good for second. So, pretty impressive. And, picking up lots of points on the road, even if they were ties, to kind of dispel a little bit that argument that they can't win away.
Yeah, definitely. And, I admire how they kind of overcame that penalty they got. I mean, it wasn't a flagrant violation. It was really just more confusion about whether the player was eligible for Ecuador or Colombia, I think it was. So that was a bit unfortunate, but they overcame it well.
I'll just note, because this is quite interesting. So in 18 games played, Ecuador scored only 14 goals. However, they conceded a mere 5.
5 goals. Wow.
Normally 14 goals. I mean, 14 goals was fewer goals scored than Venezuela, who finished third bottom.
Yeah.
And part of that was they played out 8 0-0 draws.
Wow. Well, that's insightful. I mean, I guess then we can pretty much expect a very defensive team in the cup, hard to break down.
Yeah, even their defeats against Argentina and Brazil were just 1-0 games. So, yeah, they will be difficult.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think significant for the cup there. Okay, well, that is it. Again, friendlies, not much to look at there, but it was actually 5 ties and 1 draw in friendlies since October. So a bit of an uninspiring lead up there.
Yeah, 5 draws and 1 defeat, which maybe given their Copa America qualifying, we shouldn't be all that surprised by.
Yeah, that's true. And not more than um, a goal scored against them. So again, that defensive strength significant. Okay, on we go then to our third team, Ivory Coast, beginning with a broad view of their participation and achievements.
So Ivory Coast's first international game was in 1960, and they first entered World Cup qualification in 1974. Apart from not entering in 1982, their participation has been consistent. They entered the African Cup 9 years earlier in 1965. They've been quite consistent in participation there, except for the same non-entry in 1982, in addition to disqualification in 1978 for the use of an ineligible player.
Yeah, in terms of achievement, Ivory Coast is far more successful in African Cup play than in World Cup play. They reached the regional tournament on their first entry in 1965 and finished third there. They finished in the top 4 over the next 2 campaigns and would go on to do so over 8 of the 20 campaigns between 1986 and 2023. They won the title 3 times in 1992, 2015, and 2023. Thus, their first entry into the World Cup was long overdue, and even qualifying 3 times in a row doesn't measure up to their African Cup record. They have not passed the group stage and have even failed to qualify since 2014, despite winning 2 African Cup titles in that period. A return to the World Cup here in 2026 will hopefully help to align the relative achievement. Let's move on then to a bit of a closer look at their weaker competition, the World Cup.
Yeah, so despite being a significant African power in the previous century, their World Cup presence was only felt in 2006 with a breathtaking qualification over Cameroon. It was overdue here rather than a surprise. From 1974 to 2002, they had mixed success in World Cup qualification runs, sometimes knocked out early and 3 times finishing second in the final round. Of these, though, only in 1994 did they really come close. In 2006, though, a thrilling qualification saw them finish 1 point ahead of Cameroon, despite losing to them twice. And that was their first qualification of 3 appearances in a row. They reached the Cup convincingly in 2010 and 2014 thanks to a golden generation. These 3 qualifications were sandwiched in 2002 and 2018 by second-place finishes behind the advancing team, but behind by more than 3 points. 2022 saw them 2 points shy of the leader, but in 2026, a consistent campaign against weaker opposition saw them qualify directly. So their 4th appearance in a cup here. In the cups, however, Ivory Coast have never passed the group stage, despite picking up a win every time. That was in their 3rd game over Serbia and Montenegro in 2006, over North Korea in 2010, their best campaign since it included a tie with Portugal in their opener, and then a win against Japan in their opener in 2014. That was their best opportunity as they lost narrowly to Greece in the 3rd match and just missed out on advancing.
All right. Well, that is interesting. And we move on to what's really a more successful regional cup there, the African Cup.
Yeah, Ivory Coast African Cup journey started well in 1965. Reaching the 6-team tournament was an achievement itself, and finishing 3rd there was a good result. The tournament expanded to 8 teams in 1968, but they finished 3rd again, and then 4th in 1970. Then they entered the worst period of their history, reaching only 2 of the next 6 editions, and knocked out in the group stage in the 2 they did reach. To that can be added a group stage exit when hosting in 1984, but it did begin a continuous run of successful qualifications for the Cup, interrupted only by 2004 when they fell in qualification to South Africa. 1986 was another 3rd place finish, and they passed half the group stages from then until 2002, winning their first title in 1992, beating Ghana in the final 11-10 on penalties. Ivory Coast's golden generation began in 2006, immediately after that non-qualification in 2004. Alongside reaching 3 World Cups in a row, they took 2nd place in the 2006 African Cup, 2nd again in 2012, and finally their 2nd title in 2015 to mark the great period. They also passed the group stage every time during that period. The end of the golden generation was marked by defending the title with a group stage exit in the 2017 edition, and then in failure to reach the World Cup in 2018, so a sad end. They have passed the group stage since, but fairly unremarkably, except for 2023. There, as host, a group performance so ghastly that they fired their manager mid-tournament was followed by narrowly squeaking into the final stages and then going on to win the title under the new manager.
Oh, wow. Do you remember that 2023 campaign?
I do. I think they lost their opener 4-0, and then only got through with like 2 points. They secured one of the 3rd place.
They did. They were in, I think, Group A. Well, they Group A because they were the hosts. I think it was in the 3rd game they lost heavily to Equatorial Guinea. Fired their manager, but still had to wait more than a week to figure if they would get through. And it didn't look good with just 2 points, but they did. They did make it through, and then under the new manager, went on to win the cup. Amazing.
It was.
Do you remember any of the characters from their golden generation?
Yeah, I mean Didier Drogba, Yaya Toure, Kolo Toure, Gervinho for a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some really great players, real
Yeah.
stars.
They still have some good players, maybe not quite at that caliber, but that's more a matter for the player media cast. Let's finish here with Ivory Coast, a summary of their strength over their history. And yeah, they really had 3 points or 3 periods of being a first tier power, two in the late 60s and early 90s, though neither of those measured on their World Cup radar. The golden generation, beginning in 2006, was the most enduring, going all the way to 2015, and at least registered on the global stage with World Cup appearances, even if failing to pass the group stage wasn't really in line with their African Cup success. The misalignment sees them as a second to top power in Africa, especially since 2006, but really only a third tier power on the global stage. They'll hope to rectify this in the upcoming World Cup, although the current team, and I'll ask your opinion on this, the current team is not as strong as the golden generation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the golden generation got their success in the end. They didn't have maybe as much as they would have liked, but they really were probably one of the strongest teams ever to come out of Africa when you look at the star power and just the number of star players that they had. So I agree, it's a good generation, but it will be hard to match that golden generation of the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, it is tournaments like these that kind of create golden generation. So a good performance here could mean another strong generation. Okay, well, let's go into a bit more detail and look at their recent history. We'll take a look at the World Cup campaign in 2022.
Yeah, they received the bye in round one, just a preliminary round. They started the campaign with a shudder of inconsistency, tying Mozambique away. That would cost them, as they would finish behind the more consistent Cameroon, with whom they exchanged home wins. They won both their games against last place Malawi, but finished second in round 2 of 3, and only first place advanced to the final round.
Yeah, that final round was just a two-team playoff there, but bit of disappointment for Ivory Coast. Let's take a look at, unfortunately, not the 2023 campaign, which was filled with adventure, but the 2025 African Cup campaign.
Yeah, so to qualify, an Ivory Coast typical pattern, won all home games in qualifying, but once again suffered away losses. This was in games 4 and 5 to Sierra Leone and Zambia, which allowed Zambia to jump ahead of them. So for the second tournament in a row, they finished second in the qualifying group behind Zambia. However, the top two both advanced to the tournament. In the Cup, Ivory Coast beat Mozambique and tied Cameroon, and riskily played a B team against Gabon, which required a late comeback there to win and ultimately finish first in the group stage. They beat Burkina Faso in the round of 16, but were defeated by Egypt 3-2 in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, so a pretty standard finish, I think, for Ivory Coast. But yeah, I was really alarmed when they fielded that team against Gabon, which is not a bad team.
Yeah.
And they needed the points to, to go through. So a bit of a shocker that was. Okay, on we go to the World Cup qualifying campaign for this tournament. What did they do to get here?
Yeah, so in a 6-team group, Ivory Coast put in a really powerful campaign. They dropped points only in away ties with Kenya and Gabon, and it needed to be because it needed to be a good campaign because Gabon were almost as consistent, finishing only 1 point behind. That was a real race to the wire. But Ivory Coast did finish first in the qualifying group with 8 wins and 2 draws. So they took the automatic advancing spot to the tournament. And I will mention that Ivory Coast did not allow a single goal against in their 10 games. So their 2 0-0 draws, even those reflected the defensive strength. So between Ivory Coast and Ecuador, 2 very strong defensive teams when you go by their qualification results.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, when I recall Germany in the Cups against South Korea and against Japan too, their frustration and struggle to score a goal was maybe the most noticeable thing. So I wonder if this will be a frustration for them too.
Yeah, that's a good point, which I'm sure we'll get back to.
Yeah. Anyway, you can see like this qualification all took place before the African Cup, and yeah, you can see why I was alarmed. They fielded a weak team against Gabon. Gabon almost beat them out in this campaign.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. Yeah, Gabon were very consistent. Gabon actually went to a fourth game qualifier, so they did kind of give themselves a shot because of their consistency. But Ivory Coast won the race by a point.
Yeah, yeah, and important to win the group here because the playoffs was pretty difficult there. Anyway, again, recent friendlies, nothing really significant there. That game cancelled with Germany. They beat South Korea 4-0, which was good, and beat Scotland as well.
Yeah, in good form. 2 more shutouts.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, I don't really see Ivory Coast as a defensive team, but now you've pointed it out. That might be what makes them difficult. They're more famous for their attacking players, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, we move on to our fourth team, Curacao, and we begin with a broad overview of their participation and achievements. Probably a bit more history than most people realize.
Yeah, a lot of that history came under the name the Netherlands Antilles, which they were known as from 1948 to 2010. And they are a very old team, having played their first international game in 1926. Curacao first entered the World Cup in 1958 and the CONCACAF Championship from its very beginning in 1963. They've never missed a World Cup qualification, but have been inconsistent in regional competition, withdrawing from the CONCACAF Championship in 1971, and then not entering or withdrawing from several Gold Cups, or more specifically, the Caribbean Cup, which was a qualifying tournament. All in all, they did not participate in 6 of the 9 Gold Cups between 1991 and 2005, but they've entered consistently beginning in 2007.
Yeah, in terms of achievement, they were stronger in the past than in modern times, but they have come back to form since 2017. In the World Cup, they reached the final round of qualification twice. 2026 offered them a much easier passage with the tournament held in the region and more spots available. But they nevertheless did very well to seize the opportunity. They did well in early regional cups too, finishing third in 2 of their first 4 editions. However, they didn't reach the cup after 1972 and returned only in 2017, from which time they have usually qualified. A quarterfinal finish in the 2019 edition is their best result. Let's zoom in a little bit there on the World Cup then.
Yeah, so the Curacao were competitive in early World Cup entries, reaching the final round in 1962 and 1974. Though they finished just 2 points away from the World Cup in 1962, a close analysis shows they weren't really close there either. They fell in strength since, sometimes failing to pass the first round. Despite some impressive individual results against stronger Caribbean teams like Haiti, there's little to boast of at the campaign level, except perhaps knocking out Cuba in both 2018 and 2022. The latter did mark improvement at the campaign level as it reached the semi-final round of qualification. In 2026, they thrashed Haiti 5-1 in Haiti, then won the final round over Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago to reach the cup.
All right, that's the World Cup history. Pretty good in the last qualification campaign there. Let's take a look at how they've been doing at the regional cup level.
So Curacao, or really the Netherlands Antilles, were a force to be reckoned with in the early years of the CONCACAF Championship. In 1963, they reached the final round by twice beating Haiti, Mexico, Jamaica, and Honduras along the way. So they finished third there. Given this, they were surprisingly uncompetitive over the next 2 cups, but finished third again in 1969 ahead of Mexico, who they tied in the round robin, and ahead of Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, whom they beat. They grew significantly weaker after that, despite some competitive results at the game level, and did not qualify for the CONCACAF Championship after 1977. There, it was a poor record in the Caribbean Cup that left them far from it. Out of the blue, they won the last 2 editions of that cup to qualify for the 2017 Gold Cup, and then through the Nations League, qualified for the next 2 editions, reaching a peak in 2019 with a quarterfinal finish. Despite qualifying for the Gold Cup in 2021, they were forced to withdraw due to COVID rampant among the players, and then they didn't reach the 2023 edition. They returned in 2025, tying Canada and El Salvador, but failing to pass the group stage.
Yes, we were not well pleased with that tie. Just a quick correction on that. They did win the last edition of the Caribbean Cup, not the last 2 editions there.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick look at the CONCACAF Nations League record here.
Yeah, so Curacao was placed in League A in 2018-19 thanks to a consistent performance in the placement round, and they remained there for 2 seasons. They did drop to League B in the 2023-24 season, but bounced straight back up and will play in League A in 2026-27. And it's these results in the Nations League that have earned them passage to most of the recent Gold Cups.
Yes. Okay, well, let us finish then with a broad summary of their strengths. And Curacao are a 3rd-tier team, but they have bordered on 2nd tier at times, 3rd tier in the region there. While that period really didn't register in World Cup results, they had a distinctly strong period at the start of regional competition, finishing 3rd in 2 CONCACAF championships in the 1960s. After 1974, though, they were generally 4th tier, several times knocked out in the first round of both competitions. Better recruiting likely accounts for the sudden improvement that led to the 2017 Caribbean Cup title and a return to the regional tournament now called the Gold Cup. Like many Caribbean nations, they scoured Europe to find eligible players, but their connection with the Netherlands offered a deeper pool than most Caribbean countries had access to. They drew on this to rise out of 4th tier and become a 2nd to 3rd tier team in the region, enough to qualify for the Gold Cup, which was expanded in 2019, and to participate in Nations League A. Reaching the World Cup in 2026 is likely a one-off event, but they have become more competitive in qualification. And, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying that, a one-off event, or do you think that is a bit harsh?
Well, I think certainly the door was open because of the automatic qualification for Canada, USA, and Mexico. But we maybe even see this with a team like Cape Verde, where, to some people it'll be, where did Curacao come from? But they have actually been building in strength. It was certainly a remarkable achievement to get to this World Cup. And I agree with you, it's probably a one-off. But it was out of the blue, but it also had been building for a bit of time in that they had a lot of momentum really over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and they did beat some teams who have reached the World Cup before. Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, tied Canada in the Gold Cup. So, as you say, their strength is growing.
Yeah, they may though become more attractive to Dutch players with roots to Curacao as a result of their recent success. So perhaps reaching this World Cup will help them continue to draw from that pool, which could build to sustain success.
I mean, that could even happen between now and June. A couple of players come in. A great opportunity for some of the Dutch players with connections to reach the World Cup. On we go with a look at their recent history. We'll look at their World Cup 2022 qualifying campaign.
Yeah, so Curacao came in as a pot 1 team in the first round of qualifying, though they did have inferior head-to-head records with 3 of the teams below them. But they did well and proved their seeding in a tough group. They tied Guatemala, but otherwise beat Cuba and then St. Vincent and the Grenadines to finish first of 5 in their round 1 of 3 group. Despite recent improvements that gave them a chance to reach the final round, ranked slightly ahead of Panama in the FIFA rankings. In fact, they were bested and knocked out by Panama, being a team that had reached the previous World Cup. So one step short of reaching the octagon, the final round of qualifying.
Yeah, but even if they were ahead of Panama in the rankings, I think Panama's quite a bit stronger
Yeah.
there. So, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it was only 2-1 on aggregate for Panama, so Curacao were close.
Yeah,
They were competitive there too.
that's true. Okay, well, the next thing we will look at is the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup there.
Yeah, so they were in Nations League B for qualifying, where they lost to St. Lucia in their opener and also tied Grenada. However, they won all their other games, including both over St. Martin, and finished a comfortable first of 4 in their League B group, which earned direct qualification for the Gold Cup. In the tournament, they tied El Salvador and then tied Canada, scoring a late goal against Canada's mostly B team. But in their third game, with the chance to advance, they lost to Honduras and so finished third in the group stage.
Yeah, a pretty competitive performance there. Okay, and the last thing we'll look at here is the CONCACAF Nations League in 2024-25.
Yeah, and we kind of already touched on that because that was qualification
Oh,
for the Gold Cup. They finished first in a 14 group, which included St. Lucia, Grenada, and St. Martin.
yeah, so those are the level of teams they're playing in League B. They're certainly a bit better than that. And now they're back in League A. That was the only season actually that they did spend in League B. Okay, well, I think I said the last thing for the Nations League, but no, the last thing is the qualification campaign. Quite exciting for this World Cup. How did they get here?
Absolutely. So they weren't one of the bottom 4 teams, which played in round 1, a preliminary round. So they came in round 2 as a pot 2 team, actually from the top of pot 2. And they solidly earned an advancing spot even before their last game against Haiti, who came from the bottom of pot 1. So they're kind of next to each other and just a point ahead in the FIFA rankings. In fact, they thrashed Haiti away from home to win the group. They then advanced to round 3, where they came in as a pot 2 team, but they beat pot 1 Jamaica at home. However, 2 ties with Trinidad and Tobago threatened their campaign until Jamaica also tied Trinidad in the second last game. This meant that a draw in Jamaica would see them through to top spot, and they kept it goalless to earn first place in the round 3 qualifying group and direct entry into their first World Cup. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, everyone expected Jamaica to be the team. They've also been kind of scouring European records, have a few good English players coming in to play for them. Nobody expected Jamaica to finish second in this group.
Yeah, I mean, even going in as first place into the final game, Jamaica at home would probably have fancied themselves to still win it and qualify for the World Cup, which would have been their first since 1998. But Curacao proved resilient to qualify.
Yeah, I mean, a great performance, especially in that last game. As you say, Jamaica would have fully expected to win at home, but Curacao pulled it out. All right, well, that is how Curacao got here, and that brings us to the end. We will take a look, though, at their recent friendlies in March. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, 2 recent games they played, both in Australia. They played China and Australia. They lost 2-0 to China and then 5-1 to Australia. Not the strongest competition, especially China, who are, relatively uncompetitive in their region. So, not exactly the results they wanted in their warm-ups for this World Cup.
Yeah, and I'll be making the argument later that I think Curacao will basically be trying to avoid score lines like that as their main goal in this cup. I don't really see them winning, but if they can avoid humiliation. Again, do you think that's too
Yeah,
harsh? Yes, you do think it's too
um,
harsh?
I do.
Okay, well, I'll just move on then. Let's move on to part three. We are moving into our comparison of the teams in relation to each other, and we're going to finish this with a discussion.
Yeah,
And let's begin with the pots and rankings.
so here we look at the pots and where the teams came from. All the teams really were from the bottom of their pots, which is kind of interesting. Germany came in as in ninth in the world, but that was the lowest team in pot one outside of the three hosts. Uh, Ecuador were the third weakest team in pot two, or third lowest ranked team in pot two, and Ivory Coast were the fifth lowest, or that would be 8th out of 12 in pot three. And then finally, Curacao come in as the third lowest ranked team in the tournament. So again, the point here is that all the teams are from near the bottom of the pot. So, arguably, the draws could have been tougher for each of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I guess you could use that to say it's a weak group. I don't really feel that way, apart from Curacao. Frankly, there's a lot of teams in pot three I would prefer to face than Ivory Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think it's a weak group, but yeah, we'll get into that. Perhaps a
Yeah.
level of competitiveness given their kind of similar positioning.
Okay, let's move on to the rankings of the team by the FIFA and ELO systems.
Yeah, so we'll use their rankings as of March 2026. So Germany is 10th in FIFA and 11th in ELO. Germany, accustomed to being a top 10 team, has actually spent a lot of time outside of that in both systems, kind of from 2018 onwards when they had their ghastly World Cup group stage. So yeah, 10th, 11th is kind of an average for them over the last few years. They've never really hit form to propel them back into kind of the upper echelons of the rankings.
Yeah, and yet, one wouldn't be surprised to see them there. But yeah, they dropped from first to 16th after the World Cup in 2018. They've never really made it back really into the top 10, say. Interestingly, here, Ecuador is ranked ahead of them in one of the ranking systems.
Yeah, in the ELO system, Ecuador is ranked 23rd in FIFA and 9th in ELO. We saw their strong qualification campaign and a decent Copa America, so they've risen quite a bit. They were 50th, or 53rd, in fact, 5 years ago in the world ranking, so up to 23rd. And at that time, they were 23rd in ELO and moved up to 9th. So I think partly they're ranked high because they play good competition. But yeah, Ecuador ranked ahead of Germany in the ELO rankings, kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, an interesting dynamic. And yeah, kind of further to what you said about them playing tough competition, maybe Germany wasn't really able to build up their ranking through the weak teams that they played in qualifying there. And we saw them losing to some bigger name teams in the Euro Cup finals. So, yeah, I mean, I personally don't really see Ecuador as a ninth place team. Looks to me like 23rd is a bit more accurate. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think the FIFA ranking is more accurate this time.
Okay, well, next we have Ivory Coast. Also, a bit of a big difference there between the two ranking systems.
Yeah, they're currently 34th in FIFA and 52nd in ELO. In the FIFA rankings, at least, this kind of marks a high point for them over the last decade, really, where they've kind of steadily moved up from like the low 60s even in 2018. And in ELO too, it's a bit of a rise, though a bit more consistent. They've climbed from the 60s up to 52nd, so showing some improvement. Yeah, over the recent years.
Yeah, but actually, the title win in the 2023 African Cup didn't really help them that much because they probably lost a lot of points in the group stage there.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. Well, finally, the systems are fairly agreed on Curacao.
Yeah, 82nd overall in FIFA and 90th in ELO. They moved up in the ELO rankings, which shows a bit tends to show a bit more of a long-term view. But actually, their FIFA ranking has been pretty consistent over the last 5 years. They've been in and around 80th. So I was maybe expecting that they would have had a recent rise, but they've actually, again, been pretty consistent. They were 81st 6 years ago and 82nd now. So relative consistency there in FIFA.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I would have thought that it's risen over the time. I mean, in the broader history, we did kind of point out that they started gaining strength from 2017 onwards. Yeah, I'm a bit surprised they were above 100 for most of the FIFA time there. Okay, well, next we're going to look at head-to-head record. Again, not much to look at when it comes to international teams like this, but we do have one pair that's played each other before.
Yeah, the only teams that have met before are Germany and Ecuador. That was in the 2006 World Cup, which Germany hosted. That was a group stage win for Germany.
Yeah, so you would have expected Germany to win that at home. Otherwise, none of the teams have ever met each other.
Yeah.
So not much to report there. Let's move on to what the odds makers say. Connor, I'm thinking of using Polymarket. Do you know what Polymarket is?
I'm not aware, no.
It's an online predictions thing. It's a pretty controversial, actually. But basically, it's an algorithm where the more people bet on an outcome, it could be anything in politics or in sports or all sorts of things. I'm not a gambler myself, but I think Polymarket has proved fairly accurate in predicting outcomes, and they probably do more than what we have here, which is just odds to win the group. I wonder if I can ask it like, what are Curaçao's odds of passing the group, or what are Ecuador's chances of finishing third, for example? So I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. For now, though, the odds to win the group do heavily favor Germany. They're at 69%. Ecuador's ahead of Ivory Coast, 21% to 14%, and Curacao just 2%. But maybe even 2% they'd be pleased with.
Yeah, I mean, 2% means that 2 out of 100 times they would win this group, and I really doubt that.
I doubt that very much.
Okay. Well, according to AI, team value is actually the best predictor of how things will go, and I'm not sure I agree, but let's take a look at team value for these four teams.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, Germany is the highest at 750 million, kind of an aggregate of their squad. Ecuador is 310 million, and Ivory Coast 230 million, so not too far apart. And Curaçao squad is just 18 million, so actually fairly similar proportions to what we see in the odds.
Yeah, that's true. Curacao there with a lot of their players playing in the Netherlands, but not for big teams in the Netherlands there. And that kind of leads us into our discussion. I'm not sure which one you'd like to use as a starting point. Do you have an idea, or we'll go with mine?
Yeah, I was just going to comment about Ecuador and Germany, about ELO putting them, Ecuador slightly ahead. Do you think, do you see Germany as a clear favorite, like the odds and team values do, or do you see it being competitive with Ecuador, maybe even Ivory Coast?
That's funny. That's a starting point I was going to use as well. No, I don't agree with that ELO ranking. I think Germany will be really anxious to get things back on track. Their record over the last two World Cups is a disaster, really second only to Italy not making the World Cup for the third time in a row now. So Germany will be anxious to kind of reassert themselves here. And I don't see Ecuador really challenging them for top spot. How about you?
No, I don't. I mean, no one could have predicted Germany's failures of the last two times. I don't think Germany, in terms of their squad, is back to the height of what it has been in the past. But Certainly, I expect them to win this group. I think Ecuador and Ivory Coast are tricky competition, both capable of taking points off Germany, or perhaps frustrating them, as we've seen that both of them are very strong defensive teams, and maybe Germany might struggle to score and play out a 0-0 draw. So I don't think Germany will walk over the group, but to finish first and probably undefeated would not surprise me.
Yeah. Germany, I think we did say this during the main part of the media cast, but kind of got off to a bad start in the last two World Cups, losing their first game. I don't see that happening here, of course, because they play Curacao in their first game. So, I think the earth will crack in half if they were to lose that game. But at least it'll be something that will kind of build their confidence, and they can kind of go on to face Ivory Coast and Ecuador. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did suffer a tie in those games. I would be surprised, though, if they didn't win the group.
Yeah.
But more surprising might be Curacao getting anything out of the out of the tournament. I think you blamed me for being a bit rude in saying that their main goal here will be not to suffer humiliation, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean I think they're going to lose all their games here, and hopefully they can keep the score lines respectable.
No, in truth, I do agree with you. We've seen other teams get to the World Cup, and even Panama a few years ago, another CONCACAF team, happy to get a goal, to maybe get a point. That I think will be it here. Certainly, they don't want to be humiliated and suffer a devastating goal differential against Germany. In their other two games, I think they'll find it difficult. They'll find it difficult to score and probably to keep goals out. But yeah, I mean, for a team of Curacao to be at the World Cup with just 150,000 people is truly remarkable. And that really is the achievement. So I agree. A tie, I think, would be fabulous, but probably even scoring a goal and maybe keeping some of the games close is a more realistic achievement for them.
Yeah, I like the comparison with Panama in 2018. I think Panama is a bit beyond now to be beyond being just chuffed with getting here. But I think Curacao is where Panama was in 2018. They probably are happy to be here, would love to score a goal, would love to maybe steal a point with a tie, but probably know themselves that their chances of winning the group are strong or are weak. That leaves us with the two in the middle, and I think that's a bit more of a close contest there between Ecuador and Ivory Coast. It seems like all of the metrics we're looking at give Ecuador, I would say, an edge, because I think in both of the ELO rankings, I think both of them are a bit off, ranking Ecuador too high and Ivory Coast a bit low. 11 points between them in the FIFA rankings, and pretty close in the other metrics. Do you see that as a close one, or do you have a favorite there?
I think it's pretty close. It's always interesting comparing teams from different regions. I mean, there's no taking away that Ecuador did extremely well in qualifying, finishing ahead of Brazil and some other strong teams. But again, a lot of those games were at home. And even if, you can't put all their success down to home field advantage, it no doubt plays a part, given the elevation. And they've always kind of been, or, for the last couple of decades have been quite strong at home. We saw recent friendly results were kind of mixed, lots of ties, a loss. So they're not probably coming in blazing form. I do think Ivory Coast are coming in with a bit more form, with some good friendly results, but a very strong and consistent qualification campaign. I mean, undefeated and no goals conceded. So yeah, I think both teams are actually quite close, and it's a pretty difficult one to call.
Oh, okay. I disagree with you a little bit on that. I think Ecuador have done enough to kind of overcome that they're just good at home accusation. We saw them getting a lot of ties at home. Oh, sorry, a lot of ties on the road. They've done better in the Copa America. They've done better in the World Cup, tying Netherlands and France. And probably should have mentioned that when we talked about Ecuador against Germany. They certainly won't be intimidated by that. I see Ecuador as a second tier team from a strong region, and Ivory Coast a second tier team from a weaker region, even though that region is improving. Ecuador managed to overcome Senegal, which I think then and now is a stronger team than Ivory Coast. So I kind of agree with the metrics here and favor Ecuador a bit. There's always room for surprises or for teams to appear to be a bit stronger than they look coming in. But I do kind of give Ecuador the edge on the surface.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I have to say it was Ecuador losing to Senegal in the last World Cup, that cost them their spot. So I think, maybe by comparison, I think it will be at least close with Ivory Coast for that final spot. It's possible that
I'm sorry, I have to rethink my whole argument because I had it in my head that they beat Senegal, but of course, yeah.
Yeah, they did lose.
Yeah, so maybe it is a bit closer than I thought. Ivory Coast is really a bit hot, a bit more hot and cold than Senegal was. I mean, they have a lot of talented players on the spot, even if they're not the golden generation. They have the attacking force to do well. And I was really surprised at how you emphasize their defensive strength, because I always kind of see them as an offensive power. They seem to have a bit of both here.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, whether Ivory Coast's 0 goals in 10 games is actually a better achievement than Ecuador's 5 goals conceded in 18 games against strength of competition, you may still say that Ecuador has the stronger defense. Again, it's the quality of the teams they were playing. But yeah, nonetheless, I think certainly teams with attacking talent can do well, but often it's defensive teams that do well because they give themselves a chance to win the game. So that's where I see both teams could get points off Germany, and sure enough, we'll watch them play out a 0-0 draw, and both advance. But realistically, both teams probably will advance. So long as they beat Curacao, 3 points is probably enough to advance in the from the group stage. And if they tie each other and get 4 points, they'll probably be reasonably satisfied with that.
Yeah, we did see in one World Cup, I can't remember which one, Ecuador failed to advance with 4 points. Only 2 teams passed in that, but that was a bit unlucky. I agree with you, especially if all teams beat Curacao here. 3 points should be enough to pass. 3 points and a draw, even something like that, should get them through to the next round, whether it's Ivory Coast or Ecuador.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's think about the teams in terms of how far you think they'll make it. How far do you think their ambitions go? For Germany, of course, passing the group stage would be a minimum requirement. How far do you think Germany can get?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think probably the quarterfinals would be a good achievement. They come in ranked 10th in the world, so I think they are going to face teams that are stronger than them. Germany have shown a bit of inconsistency, not only at World Cups, but in tournaments as well, in some of the points they've lost, even dropping points in qualifying, which is not something that they tend to do very often. I don't see Germany as a complete package capable of winning this tournament. So it kind of depends as and when I think they run into a stronger team. So I think quarterfinals is good, but do you think they'll be aiming for top 4 as they so often have achieved in their past?
Well, I think, yeah, so often they've achieved in their past means they have a pretty high standard for themselves. So I agree with you actually on the quarterfinals, but I think Germans themselves would be a bit disappointed with that. But we did see in the Nations League, they lost to Portugal and France, and then they lost to Spain in the last Euro Cup. So those teams seem a bit too strong for them right now. So quarterfinals is kind of a realistic prediction. But of course, Germany, given their history, will hope for more. I will hope for at least the semi-finals. Do you think they would be disappointed with the quarterfinal finish?
I don't think they could be too disappointed given their recent record in tournaments. They'll be disappointed if they lose to a team that they feel they should beat. But even a quarterfinal finish in the last Euros, they lost to eventual champion Spain. Can't be too harsh on that. But yeah, for them, I think it's finding their feet in major tournaments and getting something to grow with. This is not probably a tournament they're coming in with an expectation to win it, but they want to do better than they've done in the past. And I think a quarterfinal would be a realistic achievement for them.
Yeah, well, part of that will depend on where they end up in the group stage. A quarterfinal, or a win of the group stage will kind of smooth the path, hopefully, to a quarterfinal. Ecuador has passed the group stage before. Ivory Coast, even with the golden generation, didn't pass the group stage. One of them is going to, but perhaps both of them. What do you think is a realistic end for them? Do you think they'll get past the round of 32?
Yeah, that could depend on where they play. And of course, finishing second and third may be a big difference for them in terms of who their competition is. We mentioned at the start that not a lot of these teams, that none of these teams have passed group stages recently. And you mentioned only Ecuador has one. So I think as a starting point, getting out of this group would be good. And I think if they won a knockout game, it would be the first time in either of their histories that they've done that. That's probably not a bad tournament for them. Maybe they could get hot and go on a run. I mean, I think both teams will be difficult, though they come from the bottom of their pots. I think they're not teams that even stronger opposition will look forward to playing. So they could get hot. I think there's dark horse potential, but realistically, these are not teams that typically get out of the group stage. So doing so here is probably good, and winning a game would be, I think, really good for them.
Yeah. Having said that, we did say when looking at Ivory Coast history that their World Cup history kind of needs to catch up with their African Cup history. And again, even the golden generation not passing the group stage is a bit disappointing. This is where they can put things right. And again, they can be a hot team. So I'm kind of hoping that they rectify that history a bit and look as good in the World Cup as they have in some of the African Cups there.
Yeah.
Curacao, any chance of them finishing out of last or getting a point here?
I really don't see them getting a point. It would be great for them if they did. I think if they lost a game 2-1, maybe they're satisfied with that. They'll aim high, as they did even to get to this World Cup, but it's a tough group for them. And I think the World Cup will prove fairly unforgiving, and teams even maybe looking to boost their goal difference when they play them. So I think they'll be in tough.
Yes, that could be a bit of a problem for Curacao in that teams. I'm actually not sure what the criterion is in this World Cup. Is it goal difference or is it head to head?
It's typically goal difference, certainly, I think, for the third place teams where there is no head to head record.
Yeah, I think they've gone back to that because I think they were trying to move away from it to avoid situations like this where Germany, even in the first game, might be thinking, well, we have to slaughter Curacao here to make sure we have the goal difference if it comes down to that. And I think they were trying to avoid that for a time, but now have gone back to it. That is a bit of a danger for Curacao here, that teams, have the motivation to run up the score, because if they don't, the other two teams might.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think certainly this is a group I'd say with confidence that three teams will get out of it. It's more kind of figuring out the order for the top three and probably the middle two.
Yeah, I kind of hope it doesn't come down to goal difference there. That might make the order of games important here. We have Curacao facing Germany. We've talked about that. We have a pretty big game there in the first round, Ecuador against Ivory Coast, which may set the tone for the group. Anything you want to observe here? Do you see any advantage to Ivory Coast playing Curacao last?
I mean, they may know the goal difference they need. I think actually, I said that Ivory Coast and Ecuador might tie 0-0. Now that I see them playing in the first game, I think they probably would. If they tie each other, they're probably both satisfied with that. It sets them up well. And probably neither team wants to lose their opener. So I can see that being a very cagey, defensive 0-0 game. So I think coming first maybe could be good for both teams, but maybe not for the spectator, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they will be pretty cautious in the first game there. Again, I kind of hope it doesn't end in a tie, because that'll make them cautious for the rest of the group stage. If one of them loses, then they have to kind of throw out their best in the second game or third game against Germany. And I would love to see these teams at their best against Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unless you have something to add, I think that brings us to the end. No, wait! I have to pin you down. You sly devil. What is your?
I almost got away with it. I'm going to say Germany win the group, Curacao last. But I favor Ecuador over, I favor Ivory Coast over Ecuador to finish second. I think they're maybe a slightly stronger team, but I see them being tied on points. So it really coming down to goal difference between those two.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm pretty close with you there. I think this group is fairly obvious. The obvious prediction is Germany first, Curacao last. I do give Ecuador the edge over the Ivory Coast, although, you know, what you said during this media cast does make me doubt myself a little bit more. I do think it's close between them. But yes, for me, Germany or pot order. For you, it's Ivory Coast ahead of Ecuador.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see which one of us is right. Curaçao's 2% chance might see them winning the group.
1 in 50.
Okay. That's it for Group B. We will see you again for Group F.
All right. I'll see you then.
We would like to thank Michael Foster and Pixabay for the wonderful music in this media cast. The title of the piece used is Look to the Sky, Tribal Dance Beats Native American.